A heated debate is stirring in the U.S. over gas stoves. But is it all just overcooked? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. There's always something that can boil into an outrage these days. Anything can become a hot topic, including gas stoves. That's right. People are turning up the heat over the gas stove culture war. There were two sparks that ignited the outrage. One of them was a recent study from December in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health. It found that more than 12% of childhood asthma nationwide is attributed to gas stoves. Ooh, burn. Okay, that one didn't really work. But hey, I'm trying to win at stove pun bingo. This new study, or rather all the news reports written about it, kicked off a new wave of alarmism over gas stoves. But that was nothing compared to spark number two, a Bloomberg News interview with Richard Trumka Jr., a Biden-nominated commissioner for the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. Trumka suggested that the commission would consider an outright ban on gas stoves. He said that gas stoves are a hidden hazard and that any option is on the table. Products that can't be made safe can be banned. Okay, but any product can be an unsafe hidden hazard. Forget stoves. Stepping barefoot on Legos is way more dangerous. How are these things still legal? This wasn't the first time Trumka mentioned a ban. He made similar comments last month when he said, "We need to be talking about regulating gas stoves, whether that's drastically improving emissions or banning gas stoves entirely. And I think we ought to keep that possibility of a ban in mind because it's a powerful tool in our tool belt." Banning gas stoves entirely, what does that mean? Does this mean actually outlawing gas stoves that people already own? What next? Are they going to ban their deep fryers? You know, because the U.S. government isn't cool with people getting their oil from somewhere other than Russia and Saudi Arabia? If you look just at the headlines, you would definitely think that this is about banning all gas stoves. But Trumka was talking about a possible ban on new gas stoves, not the ones already in people's homes. Not many people got the memo, though. Some were getting the impression that the federal government would go house to house to confiscate gas stoves like ICE agents. Hot agents? And that's how the culture wars went up in flames. Again, Republicans criticized gas stove bans to score political points against unelected bureaucrats. And people ate it up. Even lazy single guys who never cook for themselves were like, "You can't take my gas stove. That's where I keep all my Doritos." After the backlash started, Trumka tried to turn down the heat. He tweeted that the commission wouldn't come for anyone's gas stoves. He also said switching from gas to electric would be voluntary and supported with an $840 rebate from the Inflation Reduction Act, which is a pretty sweet deal. After all, $840 can buy a lot of Doritos. But it was already too late. The lid was already open. Republicans have seized the opportunity to claim that Biden was waging a war on people's kitchens. More after the break. Welcome back. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission saying they were only considering banning new gas stoves, not all gas stoves, wasn't exactly helpful. Many didn't like the idea of banning people from buying new gas stoves either. This has made the gas stove a new Republican symbol in the culture wars, supposedly to stop a Democrat power grab. Specifically a power grab while they were wearing oven mitts. Somehow, "Come and take my gas stove" is the 2023 version of "Don't tread on me." Is it just me, or is the culture war getting dumber? I guess no one should be surprised. If Democrats are involved, then it's a given that Republicans will pick a fight, and vice versa. What that usually means is trying to roast people on Twitter. Like when Senator Tom Cotton tweeted that Democrats are coming for people's kitchen appliances because their desire to control every aspect of people's lives knows no bounds, including how they make breakfast. Which is scary. Unless you're one of those maniacs who eats pancakes with ketchup. In that case, you do need to be stopped. Others, like Texas Congressman Ronnie Jackson, are tweeting things about how the White House would have to pry his gas stove from his cold, dead hands. Which is confusing because you'd think if his stove were in his hands, they wouldn't be so cold. But I wouldn't want you to think that people are only tweeting their outrage.
You're not taking our gas stoves away from us. That is your choice.
Yes, Ron DeSantis just literally held up a sign that says, "Don't tread on Florida," with a gas stove on it. Okay, it's not just me. The culture war is definitely getting dumber. There's even a website called SaveTheStoves.com. You might think you're signing a petition to save our stoves, but it's really a sneakily disguised page to get you to sign up for Congressman Ronnie Jackson's campaign email list, where he will ask you for money forever. There's also a bill to prevent gas stove bans called the Stop Trying to Obsessively Vilify Energy Act. No, this isn't a joke. There really is a bill called the Stove Act. Here's what the U.S. would look like if Congress spent more time trying to solve real issues and less time coming up with acronyms for culture war bills. You know the dumbest thing about this? Most Republicans probably don't even have gas stoves. Only 38% of Americans have gas stoves. There's only a handful of states where the majority of people have gas stoves. And most of those states are blue, like California, New Jersey, and New York. In the vast majority of red states, more than 70% of people have electric stoves. But why let facts get in the way of righteous indignation? Why do most Americans have electric stoves? There are several reasons. Electric coil stoves are cheaper than gas stoves. They also don't require running a natural gas line, which means they're also cheaper to install. And in parts of the U.S., like the South, most homes are heated with electricity, not natural gas, so it makes sense to have more electric stoves. Okay, we're done with the facts. Back to the culture war. After all the brouhaha, the White House denied supporting banning gas stoves, probably because they understand that this is both a stupid and unpopular hill to die on. In fact, the chair of the Consumer Product Safety Commission, who is a Biden appointee, came out and said that they would not be banning gas stoves. Basically slapping down the guy from the commission who was going around saying they should ban gas stoves, which started this whole thing in the first place. Because guess what? Lots of Democrats like their gas stoves too. Gas stoves just cook better than electric stoves. Of course, there are electric induction stoves which cook almost as well as gas, but those are really expensive and not many people have them. I suspect that very few people actually support a gas stove ban. But rather than let things simmer down, Democrats fought back by insulting Republicans' intelligence. Because why let a good culture war fight go to waste? And once again, Senator Joe Manchin, who is a Democrat, ended up on the wrong side. After he said the federal government has no business telling Americans how to cook their dinner. People told him to shut up. Others called him a ghoul, as if he could care less about child asthma. Great. Don't you just love it when people have thrown out nuance from the conversation? It just all boils down to hurling insults at each other, because that's way easier. That's why you never see any nuance battles. Yo mama's so fat because she has a glandular issue. So what's missing in the conversation about gas stoves? Well, for one, improving indoor air quality isn't bad in of itself. U.S. safety officials have been worried about gas stoves and its effects on health for decades, since at least 1985. Gas stoves leave behind pollutants, such as nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and tiny airborne particles called PM 2.5, which can affect childhood asthma. Not to mention childhood obesity, if the only thing those stoves cook is macaroni and cheese. Finding more efficient and clean ways to cook food isn't bad. On the other hand, fears about gas stoves' negative effects may be exaggerated. I'll explain after the break. Welcome back. I mentioned earlier about the recent December study connecting gas stoves to childhood asthma. Many people cite this to show how 1 in 8 cases of asthma in the U.S. can be traced back to gas stove pollution. But keep in mind that 2 of the researchers, including the lead author, belong to the Rocky Mountain Institute, an environmentalist nonprofit that pushes for zero carbon emissions. So there's already some bias there. That'd be like a study saying a vegan lifestyle is super healthy, except it's written by chickens, cows, and pigs. It might be right, but I'm a little suspicious. Now, the way they did their calculation was standard practice, but it depends on existing literature about the relationship between gas stoves and asthma. Not all studies indicated a clear causal relationship between gas stoves and asthma. Pro-gas groups like the American Gas Association love to cite this multi-year study across 47 countries that found no association between gas as a cooking fuel and asthma. That'd be like a study saying a vegan lifestyle is unhealthy, except it's written by the Meat Eaters Coalition of America. It might be right, but I'm a little suspicious. But there are studies that find a positive correlation, but paint a bit of an inconsistent picture. For example, a 2004 study of Russian children didn't find evidence that gas cooking increased wheezing or asthma-like symptoms. But that could just be because Russians are sturdier. Gas doesn't bother them when they're so used to being poisoned more directly. A 2013 study found a link with asthma for girls, but not boys. If you take information from the American Housing Survey and the U.S. Census Bureau, you'd find that Florida has a lot more children with asthma than Illinois, even though Illinois has a lot more gas stove ownership. Probably from all those pollen-breathing iguanas in Florida. The joke here is a lot of you aren't sure if I'm joking or not. Anyway, the point is not to say that it's perfectly fine to breathe in gas from gas stoves. Don't. The point is there are a bunch of other factors that can cause asthma, and we don't know for certain how much of an effect gas stoves have. A 2013 meta-analysis of 41 of these papers found that gas stoves could increase the risk of childhood asthma by 2.8% in the U.S. That's not a lot overall. The big picture is that this latest study probably overstates the contribution of gas stoves to childhood asthma. And if you want to reduce that risk, you don't have to rip out your gas stove. You could turn on a ventilation fan while cooking, use a HEPA filter in the kitchen, or even open the window. There are lots of ways to protect yourself from all sorts of hidden hazards, like wearing shoes, for example. So since there doesn't seem to be a federal gas stove ban happening, does that mean Republicans were just scrambling their brains for nothing? Well, not exactly. There are local governments that are trying to ban any natural gas use in new construction, including gas stoves. Many of these cities are in California. Of course, it's California. Back in 2021, New York City banned the use of gas heat and stoves in all new buildings, not because of childhood asthma, but because of climate change. That ban goes into effect next year. And the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, now wants to ban natural gas heating and appliances in all new buildings in the state. That ban would take effect in 2025 for smaller buildings and 2028 for bigger buildings. And it's not just about natural gas. Hochul wants to ban the sale of all fossil fuel heating systems starting in 2030. New York State has a lot of old houses that still use heating oil or even propane, which means this ban would affect more than 80% of homes. Meanwhile, Hochul is still under fire from some environmental groups, which are saying this still isn't aggressive enough. So Republicans can point to Governor Hochul and go, see, they're coming for our gas stoves. And they wouldn't be wrong. California is looking at similar bans as well. You know, the dumb thing about forcing residential homes to stop using natural gas? This doesn't do much to reduce carbon emissions if the electricity used to power, say, electric stoves and heating still relies on fossil fuels. Over 50% of New York State's electricity comes from, you guessed it, natural gas. And it's even higher for New York City. 85% of its electricity comes from fossil fuels. Of course, New York wants to convert its electricity to 70% renewables by 2030, mostly relying on wind and solar. But it's not clear that's going to pan out since wind and solar currently make up only 6% of the state's electricity. And it's very challenging to expand that with current technology. You know what? I can't wait for this debate over gas stoves to go to the back burner. After all, it's not the most lit thing to gaslight people over. Oh hey, would you look at that? I completely filled up the stove pun bingo card. So what do you think about the gas stove debate? Leave your comments below. And if you like this show, remember that we rely mainly on direct support from viewers like you. All it takes is as little as $1 per episode over on our crowdfunding website, Patreon. Visit patreon.com/America Uncovered for more. Click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.